There are stories from different persuasions that have the same theme or the same essence. Let's see what this version evokes in us. It's a story of a king. He was loved and revered by all the people. His land was peaceful and prosperous. He was renowned and loved because of his wisdom, his compassion, his fairness, his empathy. But when he was coming to the end of his life, there was a need to choose someone to take over the throne. Now the people wondered, would it be one of his sons? Would it be an advisor? But to be fair to all, the king wrote the name of his successor in a letter that was to be opened on the day of his death. So, indeed, the old king died, and his chief advisor, after all the rituals to do with his funeral, gathered everyone together and opened the letter. The letter designated the court jester, the clown, as his successor. The people were greatly surprised. How could this be? Even the jester himself had trepidation about this. But this was the king's order, and so the people gathered for a coronation. They stripped the jester of his clown's clothing. They put a crown on his head, dressed him in royal robes, and he was placed on the throne. Now, as the days passed, it became clearly evident, with the continuing prosperity of the land, that this was a wise, compassionate king. He became loved by all the people. He was revered because he listened to all. He judged fairly, without judgment, and so on. But every day, this king would go to a quiet corner of his palace, where he unlocked a room and entered it for an hour or so. The people thought that he was maybe taking a rest, contemplating, or meditating, or praying, and they did not question this. But it so happened an ambassador from a far country was sent to this land, and he every day was present as the king administered to the people and the duties of the court. And he grew to revere him also, but he also witnessed that he left at a time every day, disappearing down the corridor of his palace for an hour or so. And the ambassador was curious, so curious that one day he followed the king down the passageway, and when the king unlocked the door and entered, the ambassador knelt down outside the door, looking in the keyhole, to witness that the king, when he entered this room, stripped himself of his kingly robes, put on the garments of the court jester, the clown, and he danced and he cavorted as he did when he was a clown. And then he stood in front of a mirror that was in the room, and he spoke to himself in the mirror, saying, "Remember who you are." Now the ambassador, after witnessing this, realized that the greatness of this king came from his humility. He also grew to love and revere him, and after many years he went to the king because they'd formed a close friendship. The ambassador confessed to the king as to what he had done, but then he swore that he would never reveal his secret. But he could not help but ask the question of the king, why is it that the king chose you? The answer was, what do you think the king was before he became king? So the question arises for us. We know what it's like to be humbled, to be brought to our knees again and again in the course of life. But what have we learned is the true meaning of humility. What is the true meaning of humility?
Absence of ego.
Yes.
It's like the realization that you're just nothing, and so when you assume a role, you don't become that, you're still nothing.
Yes. Humility. How is it for you? How does this humility equate to wisdom, compassion, empathy, non-judgment? In our life? What is it that keeps you in a state of humility?
Well, I think it's just being realistic. That the always know that's what we are. We just speak in the universe, and really being human is just being realistic as where you stand in the universe.
So where does humility rest? Is it in our mind, recognizing that there's an absence of ego? Is it a state that's in our heart? Is it a state of beingness? Is it always with us as we come to this place where in life we do what's there to be done fearlessly without thought of the outcome or the consequences? Where does humility come from? Is it a constant reminder to the mind, I am not the doer, to bring us to an absence of ego? Is it a state that's in the heart to do with life and compassion and the empathy, non-judgment that's evoked? Where does humility reside in us? Is it a state of mind, or is it something much, much deeper? Is it a state of being, or much, much deeper?